There is no gainsaying that the COVID pandemic has brought the world and the Indian economy to its knees. And within this, the automobile sector has borne the brunt of this savage blow to the economy.
The coronavirus has made us all relook and change the way we live our lives. I don't think we had ever imagined 2 months ago what it would be like to live in a lockdown. We didn't even know what a lockdown was at that time because it had never happened in my lifetime. I think it also reveals many of the weaknesses which were, in a sense, inherent and apparent in the Indian industry, and which, over all these last 70 years, have prevented Indian industry generally becoming a highly competitive industry as far as the global manufacturing scene is concerned. We have always wanted, at least for the last 30 years, to attract foreign direct investment into India in the manufacturing sector. The result has been really quite small and nothing like what could have happened. Even now, when industry in the last couple of years or 3 years has been shifting out of China, the bulk of it has gone to places other than India. Very few companies have come to India. This opportunity which the pandemic has created and which is making us all introspect on, as I said, how we live and how do we do business, to consider whether we need to change something. That the economy is down on its knees is apparent to everybody. That it was an inevitable consequence of the virus is also, I think, pretty obvious because given the size of the Indian population, the density of people in cities, the way people live, four, six people in a room, the poverty and the lack of medical facilities, there was no other answer except this lockdown. But the lockdown has extracted a huge price from the economy. And it is for us now to see how do we use this situation. The automobile industry particularly is important because it constitutes almost 50% of the manufacturing sector. And what happens in the automobile industry to a large extent shapes what happens elsewhere. Most countries which grew industrially, whether it was USA, UK, Germany, Japan, Korea, China, have all ridden on the back of the automobile industry. And therefore, our industry has a particularly important role to play in industrializing India, making it competitive, creating employment opportunities. Now, what is it that we need to do, that we need to consider? One thing is pretty obvious to me, that what has been done in the last 70 years in terms of the way we have managed industry, the way industry and government have interacted with each other is not going to work any further, and it needs to change. What I mean is that as far as Indian industry is concerned, we have always looked only towards the West for management technology. This needs to be considered. Is it something appropriate for India? We need to note that the USA is not a manufacturing nation anymore. Most of their manufacturing goods come from China. The West, generally barring Germany, is not a manufacturing country anymore, and Germany has a slightly different management style. And is it appropriate for us to follow the Western management style, or should we look East now and see how we can get lessons from the East, adapt it to the Indian situation, and create an Indian management style which will be far more competitive in terms of its outcomes than what we have managed with the Western management style. I know it's very difficult to make mindset changes when we have been doing business in a certain manner over so many decades. But the pandemic has shown us how exactly that has been done by most of us in our way of living. The second thing which comes out is that government and industry have to work together. During this last 5 weeks, in some areas, industry and government have worked together in many ways. And the results of that have been outstanding. We got into this business of manufacturing ventilators at the government instance. There was complete support from government. The result was that in a few weeks, we could reach a manufacturing capacity of 10,000 ventilators a month when that company was not even doing 200 ventilators a month previously, not even in a year actually. So that is what can happen if government and industry work together. For government and industry to work together, the most essential thing is building of trust between industry and the government. This trust has been lost. It was lost initially during the license Raj period. It was lost because of corruption. It was lost because of tax evasion. It was lost because the whole system worked very differently, and productivity and competitiveness were not issues at that time. That has to change. And industry has a responsibility for doing things in a manner which will earn government trust. The industries are really living from hand to mouth. They have a very short time span during which they can function. If the going is good, everybody is good. The moment the going becomes difficult, difficult times come, we find it difficult to carry on. And that is because we have not concentrated on building the internal resources and the reserves of companies. It's necessary that today industry, and I'm including the automobile industry in that, not only the OEMs, but I'm including the vendors, the tier one, tier two, tier three, all of them have to concentrate today on generating maximum internal resources in their companies. These expenditures which they incur on company accounts, on overheads and such things have to be reduced. All that money has to be put back into the company. Sure, you'll be paying higher taxes, but then tax rates have come down significantly. And that helps to follow a cleaner way of doing business. If we build stronger companies, if we concentrate that over the next few years, let's bigger and bigger and more prosperous companies with strong balance sheets, strong reserves, then I think we will be able to change the whole cycle which has developed over these years of just carrying on as business as usual, not becoming competitive. The bureaucracy will, I think, have a different attitude. The politicians will have a different attitude. Building trust will become easier if they see that Indian industry is now concentrating on actually building industry rather than concentrating on seeing how they can lead a better life, a life with a more little bit of luxury, little bit of travel, and all the things which have been going on. The automobile industry itself actually had a bad 1920. We know what happened for various reasons which have been discussed in the past. It's just unfortunate that when we were looking to revive in the current year, we've been hit by the pandemic. And this creates even a bigger challenge for an Indian industry on how to bounce back. And I think here it will have to be a combination of industry's own actions, which must create confidence in the public, in the government, in the bureaucracy, in the politicians, and which will actually strengthen the company. But this has to be backed by some actions by the government, which will enable the industry doing all this to actually take advantage and again become a strong sector which will lead the industrialization of India. And I think demand creation is the biggest issue for the automobile industry.